10. The Neptune. The Neptune was a unique Soviet submarine. It wasn't built for military purposes, but instead, it was used for civilian sightseeing tours in the Caribbean. Visitors could take underwater tours at depths of 120 feet, with its deepest dive reaching 180 feet. It was built by Navy contractor Sevmash, which builds giant Typhoon-class subs. Russia's enemies kept a close eye on its construction, believing it was going to be something dangerous. But no, it was just for fun, and to give people a taste of what's lurking below. It made its first journey on November 23, 1992. The submarine itself was 92 feet long and was made of thick steel. Inside, people were comfortable as the vessel had air conditioning and other amenities. It was painted bright yellow, had numerous windows, and absolutely no weapons on board. It was manned by a 3-person crew, including one guide giving information and telling stories to tourists about where they are and what they see. Neptune would make 6 or 7 trips a day. A firm was founded to supervise the hiring of the boat, consisting of a Soviet submarine production factory and an Italian company that controlled certain Caribbean islands. It returned from the balmy seas of tropical Antigua to the frigid Arkhangelsk harbor in White Sea, Russia in 1996. They were supposed to maintain the ship and perform some repairs before returning it to the Caribbean, but something went wrong, and it remained there for more than 10 years, until being sold to a local company for roughly $45,000. The new owner intends to restore it and then move it to Moscow to serve as a museum. 9. 1925 Bugatti. This particular 1925 Bugatti Type 22 Brescia Roadster belonged to Golden Age of Grand Prix driver René Dreyfus, who ended up losing in 1934 during an intoxicated poker game in Paris. It was handed over to Swiss playboy Adelbert Bodie. Bodie happily left for home with his new car, but unfortunately for him, with no money in his pocket. He couldn't pay its import taxes when he was stopped at the Swiss border. Bodie had to walk away, leaving Swiss officials to dispose of his new prize however they wanted. A 10-year-old Bugatti wasn't worth much back then, so officials decided to roll it into the lake, where it eventually settled 173 feet below the water's surface. However, it wasn't until the summer of 1967, when deep diving equipment was able to withstand 29 fathoms of water pressure, that the Bugatti story became a legend, with the local diving club witnessing it for the first time. In an unconnected and unforeseen event, a local boy was killed at a street fair in 2008, and the local diving club decided to raise the long-sunken Bugatti and donate the earnings to a non-profit charity formed in the victim's honor to discourage adolescent violence. On July 12, 2009, thousands of people observed the long-sunk Type 22 rise from Lake Maggiore. In January 2010, it sold for about $370,000 at the Bonhams auction at Retromobile in Paris. 8. China's Trash Park. In Chengdu, China, there are about 200 vehicles on a small lot. They're known as zombie cars. Because of the significance of the storage space, the location is known as a tyrant's car park. Some of the vehicles have been parked in the same spot for over 2 years while vegetation has grown in and around them. These are just junk cars, either a lot of them are luxury cars. There's 2 Bentleys, one a Bentley Continental GT and the other a Bentley Flying Spur, are each valued at least 3 million yuan, which is $447,627 US. There's also some Land Rovers, Mercedes-Benz, and even a cool motorcycle. All the cars here have one specific thing in common: they were all abandoned by their owners. The majority of the cars are actually involved in ongoing criminal cases, either directly or indirectly, meaning they can't be claimed by their owners. Others have simply been abandoned as they were ready to be scrapped or their owners didn't have the correct paperwork. The cars have become a source of stress for local officials who are unsure what to do with them. Though some have been removed for sale, more and more continue to pile up in the vehicle cemetery. 7. 1974 Ferrari Dino. In 1978, some kids in South Los Angeles were playing in their backyard digging around when they discovered a buried car. After the police were contacted, they brought in a skip loader, along with some shovels, and unearthed the 1974 Ferrari Dino. There were still plates on the vehicle, so the police were able to trace the car back to its owner. It turns out it belonged to a local man who reported it stolen in 1974. It was then given to the insurance company who originally paid for the claim. The LA Times reported that the car was in good condition, which made a lot of people want to buy it. Apparently, that information wasn't true. It was actually in pretty rough shape. After all, it had been underground for 4 years. There was rust on the inside and outside, mud was in the vents, and the skip loader smashed the windshield and engine compartment. The people who buried it went to great lengths to preserve the car, but they forgot small details such as rolling up the windows all the way. The insurance firm displayed the vehicle so that customers could effectively make bids, which resulted in individuals removing whatever they could while checking it out. Eventually, the corporation reached an agreement with the buyer, allegedly a young mechanic, for a sum of $5,000 to $9,000. Later, it was revealed that the owner, Rosendo Cruz, reportedly collaborated with the alleged burglars to attempt insurance fraud. They were expected to send the Dino to a chop shop to be broken up for parts, but instead they buried it with the intention of digging it up later and then forgot where they put it. A real estate developer, Brad Howard, bought the car from Farmers Insurance and had it fully restored. As of 2019, the car has been in exceptional running condition. What would you do if you found a supercar buried in your backyard? Tell us in the comments and hit subscribe while you're at it. 6. Bugatti in the water. In 2009, Andy House paid $1 million for the 2006 Bugatti Veyron. He later got it insured for $2.2 million. In November of that same year, he drove the Bugatti into Gulf Bay outside of Lobo, Texas, to dodge a low-flying Pelican. Unfortunately for House, the incident was captured on camera with no sign of aviary involvement. House then claimed that he lost control when he dropped his phone. However, according to evidence shown in court, House intentionally drove the Veyron into the water and kept the engine running, resulting in the supercar's complete loss. Instead, he was sued for insurance fraud. The lawsuit also claimed he tried to bribe someone to steal the car and light it on fire to collect the insurance money. At the end of the hearing, House had to pay about $600,000 and he received a 1-year jail sentence. 5. Turbojet train. Both the US and Russia tested turbojet trains in the 1960s. The train, like a jet aircraft, is driven by the jet force of its engines rather than its wheels. Turbojet engines were built with the engines incorporated into a railcar, serving as both propulsion and passenger capacity. They were used for high-speed passenger services rather than freight. In 1970, the Soviets developed their own turbojet train, known as the SVL, high-speed laboratory railcar. Capable of reaching speeds of 160 miles per hour, with a mass of 54.4 tons including 7.4 tons of fuel, and a length of 92 feet. Despite its great speed, the design was deemed impractical due to the jet engine's extremely high fuel consumption, which made it extremely expensive to operate. In addition, a small fault in the rail line may have resulted in a disastrous derailment of the superfast train. Today, the last Soviet model sits rusting away in the back of the Kalinin railcar factory near Doroshika. 4. Abandoned cars in Dubai. Many people go to Dubai in hopes of a better life and career, but they're met with a financial crisis and instead struggle, rarely making it to the top. Some buy their dream cars before their careers plummet, which results in them not being able to make their car payments. Most of the time, they abandon their cars and leave town to avoid going to jail. Many have had high-paying jobs and have bought luxury cars from BMW, Ferrari, and Lamborghini. This is why there's a supercar graveyard in Dubai. You wouldn't think that cars worth millions of dollars would be abandoned every year in the city. And it's not just a handful of these cars, but thousands of them. Dubai adheres to Sharia law, and failure to pay your debt becomes a criminal offense. There is zero compassion for not being able to pay or for those who declare bankruptcy. This involves not only foreigners, but also locals who acquired such supercars with financing in order to keep up with their friends, but ended up with nothing but debt. The law strictly states that if they are not able to pay their bills, they end up behind bars. Sometimes the keys to the car are even left in the ignition while they flee to avoid going to jail. The magnificent vehicles left behind continue to accumulate cobwebs over time, since these severe regulations remain the same for everyone. The owners of the vehicles ignore their payment notifications most of the time. This results in their forfeitures. They are frequently uncollected, so they're sent to auction at a lower price. Reports say that an average of 3,000 cars are abandoned in the metropolitan area of Dubai every year. 3. SS Aquarama. Built to serve as a transatlantic US troop transport, the ship, formerly known as the Marine Star, was a Liberty ship constructed in 1945 in Chester, Pennsylvania. It only crossed the Atlantic once before the war ended. In 1952, a Detroit businessman bought the USS Marine Star and spent $8 million converting it into a cruise ferry ship called the SS Aquarama. It was a common sight on Lake Erie, as it transported people between Detroit and Cleveland, with occasional stops in Buffalo. The new Aquarama featured 9 decks with enough room for 160 vehicles and 2,600 passengers, as well as 4 restaurants, 4 bars, movie theaters, and amusement facilities. It was 520 feet long and 71 feet high. Many people remembered it for the magnificence of the Great Lakes. It was retired in 1963 and was parked on a dock in the Detroit River until 1995, when it was taken to Buffalo with the hopes of being transformed into a casino ship. Unfortunately, that plan didn't turn out well. On July 15, 1997, the ship was moved out of Buffalo, much to the delight of locals. 2. Red Star Graveyard. A vast region on the outskirts of Budapest is inhabited by abandoned trains and railway cars. This location is known as the Red Star Train Graveyard, which was formerly known as Istvántelek. This depot was constructed in the early 20th century as a national railway repair facility. In 1902, one of the factory rooms measured 28,704 square yards and was Budapest's largest structure. During its lifetime, the depot was very busy. In addition to servicing operating trains, vintage wagons and locomotives were hauled there for maintenance or renovation before being transferred to the Budapest Railway Museum. However, World War II and the demise of steam trains took a tremendous toll on the depot, and it was eventually abandoned, though the southern section is still utilized for modern train repair. Many of the locomotives intended for the museum appear to have been abandoned, partly related to a lack of funding. The collection of decrepit trains is fairly diverse and can be rather exciting for railway enthusiasts. The location consists of 2 huge depots, a few smaller sheds, and a vast open space where trains are parked. Visitors to this location can witness over 100 locomotives and railway carriages. Rare Hungarian MAV 424 steam engines, German freight carriages, and Soviet cars from the 1960s may all be found at the Red Star Train Graveyard. Old railroad tickets can even be found inside some of the newer cars. A number of the Hungarian steam engines feature a red star on the front, and that's how the people named the area. According to legend, one of the German freight carriages kept there may have been used to transfer Hungarian Jews to Auschwitz during the Nazi occupation during World War II. The Red Star Train Graveyard has become overrun with vegetation over time, and the trains have slowly succumbed to decay. The location appeals to individuals who enjoy abandoned sites, as well as those who are intrigued by trains and history. Aside from the abandoned trains, there is some interesting railway architecture, such as viewing towers built of brick and wood, as well as painted signage positioned all along the length of the station. Access to the location was made much more difficult in the summer of 2017, when guards and dogs were introduced to the security precautions. However, if you have the necessary documents, you can still get access. 1. Expensive barn find. At the beginning of 2018, Warren Kramer of North Carolina contacted barn find hunter presenter Tom Cotter about 2 incredibly expensive historic cars in his friend's garage. The property was vacant and had recently been condemned by the city, with the home and the garage due for removal. It was critical to get the 2 vehicles out and transfer them if they were to be saved. The homeowner's 1966 Ferrari 275 GTB2 and 1967 Shelby Cobra 427 had been sitting in the garage for 27 years. His reliable mechanic had died over 30 years ago in 1991, and the owner was picky about who he hired to operate on his rare automobiles. Even after nearly 3 decades of neglect, classic car insurance provider Haggerty put the vehicle's value at $4 million. Because of the risks associated with transporting such costly goods, no local towing company would relocate them. Cotter had no choice but to move the vehicles himself. They were filthy and crawling with insects and rodents. Both cars were still in shockingly good condition though, for having sat neglected for far too long. The Shelby-built Cobra had just 19,000 miles on it, while the Ferrari, which the owner had bought in the early 1980s for $47,000, had a little more than 13,000 miles. Gooding and Company sold the automobiles as is for $3.5 million at their Amelia Island, Florida auction. The car started right up after being serviced before the event. 9. City of the Dead. The City of the Dead, or Dargavs, is an old cemetery where inhabitants who lived in the valley buried their loved ones, along with their clothing and other valuable items. Dargavs is a tiny town in the Republic of North Ossetia Alania, approximately 36 kilometers, 22 kilometers southwest of Vladikavkaz. The valley is around 10.5 miles, 17 kilometers long, and the cemetery houses 100 ancient crypts. The place is shrouded in mystery and myths. Local legends claim that anyone that goes into the city won't make it out alive. According to folklore, North Ossetia was devastated by a plague in the 18th century. Residents constructed houses specifically designed for quarantining sick family members. They were fed, but they were not given much freedom to do anything else, and they were forced to stay there until they died. If a person had no loved ones left to bury, they would remain at the cemetery until their own death occurred. Each building is a family crypt containing the remains of entire generations. It is stated that if you spend enough time in North Ossetia, you'll be able to detect the old city's energies. The crypts resemble small miniature houses, with some dating back to the 16th century. A well was placed in front of each crypt, and it was intended to determine whether or not that individual made it to heaven. Guests were required to drop a coin into the well, and if the coin hit a stone at the bottom, it was considered a good sign. 8. Holy Land. Christianity and theme parks might not seem like they go together, but thanks to the vision of a man named John Greco, the two coexisted for a short while. In 1958, Greco built a religious theme park in Waterbury, Connecticut. The place was inspired by carefully selected passages from the Bible. Among the many strange attractions at the site was a diorama depicting Daniel in the lion's den, a recreation of the Garden of Eden, and various recreations of the life and teachings of Jesus. And at the center of the park stood a 56-foot, 17-meter cross and a large illuminated sign that read Holy Land USA. Holy Land USA attracted upwards of 40,000 visitors annually during its peak years in the 1960s and 1970s. The park was closed in 1984 with plans to renovate, but Greco died shortly after and the work was never completed. A group of nuns took over and tried to maintain the grounds and keep everything neat, but the park slowly started to decay over the years. It was never reopened, and the weird religious theme park has been abandoned ever since. 7. Judson. Judson in North Carolina was once a charming mountain village with a population of about 600 people. They had everything they needed, including a barbershop, an elementary school, a grocery store, a post office, and a sawmill. Life was wonderful for everyone, but things were changing rapidly. Swain County surrendered a large quantity of private land to the federal government in the 1930s and 1940s to fund the man-made Fontana Lake and the tallest dam east of the Rocky Mountains. The lake was created to supply hydroelectric power to companies producing aircraft, munitions, and ships during World War II. Everyone that lived in Judson had to be relocated, and the town was ultimately abandoned. Once the lake was completed in 1944, Judson was completely submerged, a tragic loss to those who once lived there. Homes, graves, and ancestral land was now underwater. The government wanted to appease the former residents, whose town and primary roadway were now gone, and offered to build a replacement road aptly named Road to Nowhere. But only part of the construction was completed due to environmental concerns. It was supposed to be 30 miles, 48 kilometers long, but only 6 miles, 9.6 kilometers and a tunnel were ever built. Today, Fontana Lake offers many recreational opportunities like fishing and boating. Sometimes, when the water gets exceptionally low, visitors can catch glimpses of the underwater ghost town. 6. The Old Davis Hospital. Dr. James Davis always had dreams of opening up a hospital. He grew up to be a distinguished surgeon, and in 1920, he teamed up with Dr. F.A. Carpenter, a local eye, ear, nose, and throat expert, to establish Carpenter Davis Hospital. The hospital had 35 beds, and the doctors hired a team of nurses, assistants, technicians, and associate physicians. In 1920, the hospital established a nursing school, and by 1925, it had grown so much that they relocated to its current location on West End Avenue. There, they had 250 beds. The hospital was quite successful and the first to do many things, including a 24-hour emergency room, to use IV glucose, to have a blood bank and organize blood donor services, to study X-ray images with a radiographer scope, and to have air conditioning. While the hospital was successful, as time went on there were many medical breakthroughs, which resulted in its moving to a new and bigger location. Dr. Davis died in 1955 after performing over 75,000 procedures, a real medical feat for the time. With so many medical breakthroughs and triumphs, it's no surprise that the hospital was ultimately relocated again to an even newer, larger building in 1984, which still stands strong today. But its previous location is the one we're here to talk about. Completely abandoned by 1985, the hospital is an eerie shell of what was once. It's said to be haunted. Many lives were saved at the hospital, but many more were lost. Some spirits are still present. Those who trespassed on the property reported hearing strange noises, like crying babies, windows and doors slamming, screams, weeping. Today, the old Davis Hospital is heavily vandalized and a paranormal playground for ghost hunters. Would you be brave enough to visit? Let us know in the comments below and hit that subscribe button while you're at it. 5. Abandoned movie theater. On the southern tip of the Sinai Peninsula in Egypt, nestled at the foot of a desert mountain range, the abandoned outdoor movie theater, dubbed the End of the World Cinema, is a silent and eerie sight to see. Hundreds of seats rusting away in the sand, the scene feels distinctly post-apocalyptic. It was built in the late 1990s by a rich Frenchman named Dean Iadel. He brought in 700 seats, a generator, and a giant screen that looked like the sail of a ship. But on the opening night, the theater suffered a power cut. Nobody knows what exactly went wrong. Some say the locals weren't happy about the prospect of a movie theater in the middle of the desert that would undoubtedly bring in rowdy tourists and sabotage the generator. Today, the movie theater that was never even used still sits in the middle of the desert. 4. Bolivia's train cemetery. Located in the high desert in southwest Bolivia, dozens of creepy abandoned trains from the past century rust away about 2 miles, 3 kilometers from the city of Uyuni, at the gates of the world's largest salt flat, Salar de Uyuni. The train cemetery is home to old locomotives and freight cars that have been forgotten about for decades in the middle of the desert. These railroads, decaying from time and the harsh desert climate, are a reflection of the area's history. Most of the trains here were imported from Britain and date back to the early 20th century. Originally, Uyuni was destined to become a major train destination connecting a variety of cities. But those plans fell through as both the mining industry lost momentum and disputes with neighboring countries grew to become more of an issue. The trains are slowly rusting away due to the mixture of salt and strong winds, making the massive steel structures look extremely weathered. More than 100 train cars now make up the Bolivia graveyard, each one with its own unique look. You can visit the site today and see for yourself. It's an eerie yet beautiful reminder of what was once. 3. Lobo, Texas. Located between the Van Horn and Wiley Mountains, it is a long-forgotten ghost town. The history of Lobo, Texas began in the 1800s when an aquifer was discovered in the area. Because it was the only water supply within 100 miles, 160 kilometers, people would often stop here for water and depot for the Southern Pacific Railroad in 1882. Lobo became an official town in 1902 when a post office was built, and its population was increasing until 2 earthquakes devastated the area in 1929 and 1931. Later on, a cotton gin saved that town. After it was set up, the town's population started to rise again, but devastation occurred once more after Lobo's water table dropped, causing the town to officially become abandoned due to costly repairs. A gas station and a general store were built in Lobo after a man by the name of Bill Christ bought the town. Just as business started doing well, a fire burned down the store, perhaps suggesting Lobo just wasn't meant to be. Christ tried selling the town in 1991, but had no takers. He left the area, and the town slowly started to decay. In 2001, 3 Germans purchased Lobo with the intention of using it to host art and music festivals, which they have for the past few years. It's the perfect opportunity to visit a modern ghost town today. 2. Bodium Castle. Bodium Castle was built by Sir Edward Dallingrig, who was a knight of Edward III in 1385. With his understanding of war, he constructed the castle to protect the picturesque countryside of East Sussex from the possibility of a French attack during the 100 Years' War. Sir Edward Dahlingreek was the family's youngest son, which meant he was the last in line to inherit anything from the estate. He came into possession of the Manor of Bodium in 1378. Throughout his knighthood, which lasted from 1379 until 1388, he amassed enough money to develop himself a home, which was the beginning of his castle. The unique structure, beautiful details, gardens, and multiple streams surrounding Bodium indicate that display was an important aspect of the castle's design, as well as defense. Over time, Bodium Castle had many different owners. The castle became a Grade 1 listed structure and has been held by the National Trust since 1925. Today, it's still a fascinating example of a medieval castle, but it doesn't hold quite the same impact as it once did, and unfortunately the interior has fallen into ruin. The National Trust has taken on some restoration work on the ruins, adding new roofs to the gatehouse and towers. If you're a fan of English history and fine architecture, you can visit the castle today. 1. Bodie, California. The story of Bodie began in 1859 after the major gold rush period in California. 4 prospectors came to the area, known as the Mother Lode region, in search of gold. And they found it in a small valley 75 miles, 121 kilometers southeast of Lake Tahoe. The valley and the newly developed mining outpost was hit by a violent blizzard shortly after the men discovered the gold. W.S. Bodie was one of the 4 and died as a result from the blizzard. This death gave the freshly settled district its name. The town of Bodie was officially founded in 1876 when miners discovered even more rich deposits of gold and silver. People flocked to the area in hopes of getting rich and creating a better life. Settlers came from all over, and in 1 year, the population grew from 7,000 to 8,000 residents. Because so many people moved to the area to hunt for gold, Bodie became quite the violent Wild West boomtown, full of brothels, and earned the reputation of Sin City. By 1868, Bodie had nearly been bled dry of all gold. Everyone started to leave, looking for the next profitable town. By 1881, the population dwindled to only about 800 residents. By the 1900s, Bodie was completely abandoned. Bodie became a National Historic Site and a State Historic Park in 1962. The town was declared to be in arrested decay, which orders the preservation of ruins. Today, Bodie is considered to be one of the best well-preserved ghost towns on the planet. Some claim that the entire place is haunted by ghosts who guard the town against bandits. Supposedly, if anyone visiting dares to remove any artifact, they will be plagued by the dreaded Curse of Bodie. 9. Taiwan's secret military sites. Following an upgrade to the Google Earth platform, secret Taiwanese military outposts were mistakenly published online for all to see. The update exposed several of these military installations, including 3D reconstructions of Taipei, New Taipei, Taiwan, and Taichung. At least one military camp where Patriot missiles are allegedly stationed can be readily seen via Google Earth. Anyone may view the plan of this military complex, its exact position, building structures, and even missile launch points in crystal clear detail, thanks to the detailed 3D reconstructions. According to reports, the update has also disclosed Taiwan's National Security Bureau and Military Intelligence Bureau on the maps. Taiwanese Defense Minister Yen Tae-fa stated that the government has formed a task group that will collaborate with Google to ensure national security. The firm will be instructed to obscure the locations, while the military will operate on the ground to improve the concealment of its stations. Google works with nations all around the world to hide critical facilities from public view on its mapping services. In this case, a lapse has resulted in some of Taiwan's highly kept secrets becoming public. 8. Area 6. Area 6 is a little over 1 mile long and is located in the isolated Nevada National Security location, just 12 miles from Area 51. The facility was established in 2005 as a nuclear testing site, with a lengthy runway and circular base visible on Google Earth. It's unknown what it's now utilized for because the government has kept it concealed. Darwin Morgan, a spokesperson for the National Nuclear Security Administration, stated that Homeland Security utilizes it to test their sensors and that they have good sensors capable of gathering data in less than a second before being annihilated. According to another report, the facility's objective was to test and produce unmanned aerial aircraft. Despite being questioned for years, the government officially recognized Area 51 in 2013. According to the warning signs that surround it, the base has severe security procedures that include shooting anyone on site. 7. Ulin Naval Base. In recent years, the Chinese military has constructed a number of man-made islands and clandestine installations in a region of the South China Sea. Nobody understands what they're doing with the locations, but anyone who gets too close is suspiciously told to leave. In addition to these secretive sites, China is engaging in some extremely questionable behavior on its own soil at the Ulin Naval Base. Last year, satellite images revealed evidence of a nuclear-powered assault submarine entering a strange tunnel on Hainan Island, where the base sits deep underwater. The submarine was a Type 093 Shan-class assault submarine. According to Radio Free Asia's RFR Drake Long, 6 of them are known to exist and are meant to seek and destroy warships and other submarines. The other submersibles known to dock at the station were not visible at the time the photo was taken. According to an RFA report, the graphic indicates China's potential to wield significant control over the contentious South China Sea region. Because China owns Hainan Island, no other countries may challenge any suspicious activities that they observe there. Nonetheless, the US has been monitoring the facility for decades, and authorities have noted that the installation is strongly protected. The Chinese military began construction on the base in 2000, and apparently it's currently under development. What happens with the site remains to be seen. 6. Military in the desert. A Google Maps fan with keen eyes believes they've discovered a hidden military camp in the middle of the Sahara Desert. Photographs taken above Rui, Niger, near the Libyan border, reveal what seems to be a military installation, complete with buildings, a landing strip, vehicles, and a perimeter fence, all surrounded by landmines. Aerodrome Madama is a French military airfield located near a border town on Niger's northeastern border. It was once a French colonial fort that was built in 1931. It now operates as nothing more than a border checkpoint, regulating transit between Niger and Libya. The Niger Army has roughly 100 military soldiers from the 24th Interarms Battalion from Durku on the scene. The Google Maps user was also correct regarding the landmines. The entire perimeter is guarded by barbed wire fencing and explosives. The French government revealed intentions to launch 50 French helicopters at the Madama between the 20th and 27th of December 2014 as part of the ongoing anti-insurgent Operation Barkhane. The Aerodrome Madama has a 4,265 feet laterite track with intentions to develop it. Therefore, the base is still operational today. 5. Mysterious shadow. Users of Google Maps have discovered a weird shadow at the bottom of a lake, prompting speculation that it may be an underwater military camp. The supposed facility is located in the depths of Pyramid Lake in Nevada and appears when online users zoom out. Investigators think the image is divided into 4 portions, each of which is different in length and is unrelated to the pyramid-shaped rock at the lake's end. The image was shared on Reddit, and a discussion ensued over what the form was and whether it had any purpose. There was speculation that it was a restricted underwater military station used for research. Others assumed it was merely an abandoned boat. The lake is bordered by mountains, beaches, and woods. According to reports, the lake was within arm's length of a military installation base, with a walkway connecting it to the lake. According to one Reddit user, there are other strange military outposts nearby, like the Naval Underwater Warfare Center in the midst of the desert. Strange. Records also imply that the location was utilized as a stand-in for the Sea of Galilee in the 1965 Bible-based film The Greatest Story Ever Told. Archaeologists think that people lived near the lake from 9,500 BC onwards, and there is evidence that the location was utilized by them. So far, tools, weapons, clothes, food, and mummies have been uncovered near the mysterious lake. What do you think the mysterious shadow is? Tell us in the comments and hit subscribe while you're at it. 4. Agala. The modest, isolated Mauritian island of North Agala, located 697 miles north of Mauritius in the southwestern Indian Ocean, is presently a swarm of construction activity. In 2015, India wanted access to the islands in order to establish an aviation and naval staging station for surveillance of the southwest Indian Ocean, similar to facilities operated by other nations, such as the joint US-UK facility at Diego Garcia. Satellite photography indicates that massive airfield and port projects, estimated to be worth $87 million, are well advanced. When the most recent Google Earth photographs are compared to the same area as seen in 2014, a new 9,843 feet runway capable of hosting the Indian Navy's new Boeing P-8I maritime patrol aircraft and a significant apron overshadows the previous airport. India sees the new station as critical for easing air and surface marine patrols in the Southwest Indian Ocean, as well as serving as an intelligence outpost. This new satellite picture shows the size and capabilities of this new complex. The project will include a new airport, port, logistics, and communication infrastructure, as well as any additional facility linked to the project. So far, both India and Mauritius have kept project information under wraps. The graphic depicts barracks and fields that may be utilized as parade grounds or sporting events at the runway's northern end. These photographs don't clearly reveal any signs of fuel storage facilities or communications and intelligence equipment like radars. Future imagery is likely to show such equipment and infrastructure. The island of North Agala is about 7 miles long and 0.9 miles wide, with a population of less than 300 people. It was completely isolated from the rest of the world until recently, with just a crew dock and a small airstrip appropriate for light aircraft. The Mauritius base will act as a key staging location for India's new P-8I fleet, which undertook its maiden joint patrol with France from neighboring Réunion. Following this, India signed an arrangement with Japan to have access to naval facilities in Djibouti. Agala will also make marine patrols over the Mozambique Channel easier, which is becoming a popular route for large commercial ships, notably oil tankers. The staging area will also allow the Indian Navy to monitor maritime routes around southern Africa, which now account for a large amount of China's energy imports. The island is also likely to be a good site for communications and electronic intelligence installations. 3. Russia's military base. It was claimed that Google purposefully enabled access to images showing Russia's strategic position. According to the Twitter account at Armed Forces UKR, which was previously quoted by the official Ukrainian Ministry of Defense, Google made apparent and evident alterations to unblur the images. This apparently enabled Google Maps to display Russia's military and key installations at a maximum resolution of around 0.5 meters per pixel. This prompted a social media frenzy, with the number of high-profile personalities flocking to Twitter to praise Google for allegedly making the adjustments. Lulia Mendel, former spokesperson for Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, wrote, "Google published on its maps all strategic and military objects of the Russian Federation. Google, thank you." However, Google has now denied making any changes to its settings, arguing that these pictures were always widely accessible from the start. "We haven't made any blurring modifications to our satellite images in Russia," a Google official stated. It is common for military sites throughout the world to look blurry in satellite pictures, or to be displayed in lesser resolution on Google Maps if they're classified. Independent fact-checkers argue that photographs of Russian submarines and military outposts could be found on Google long before the Ukraine war began. The images might not be recent at all. It's possible they haven't been updated in years, as is sometimes the case with satellite images. 2. Secret anti-satellite laser weapons. Russia began work to develop an anti-satellite weapon in 2011. The weapon's development has been plagued by setbacks throughout the last decade. However, new Google Earth pictures of the region suggest that building on Russia's anti-satellite weapon has officially commenced. The missile in question, known only as Kalina, was created by Russians to target foreign imaging satellites passing over Russian territory. The anti-satellite weapon is part of the Krona space surveillance complex operated by Russia's Ministry of Defense. That facility is located a few kilometers west of Zelenchukskaya. Furthermore, the weapon is near the Astrophysical Observatory of the Russian Academy of Sciences. Russia has utilized the facility to run a system that provides targeting data to Russian anti-satellite missiles using both radar and LiDAR. The initial concept for the complex was devised by the Russian government in the 1970s. It did not, however, become active until the early 2000s. Kalina will expand on the systems that Krona currently provides. In essence, Kalina is a technology that Russia intends to employ to disrupt foreign satellites traveling over Russian territory. 3 key sources provide evidence for this line of thought. First, according to a bank guarantee released online in January 2014, Kalina's objective was to establish a functional suppression of electro-optical systems utilizing solid-state lasers. Another document published online in 2017 included Kalina on a list of potential military projects. The anti-satellite weapon was classified as a space security complex in this paper. The word was used to categorize numerous additional anti-satellite systems in the text. Lastly, confirmation of Kalina's presence as a weapon can be seen in the NPK-SPP's annual report from 2013. This is because it's referred to as a laser system for electro-optical warfare. Evaluating Kalina's true potential is challenging, especially with so little data to go on. Thus far, however, the construction has made significant progress. At the facility, a new telescope dome has arisen, with the tunnel connecting it to the LiDAR building. The space review also points out that the structure is congruent with the scant information we know on Kalina. Finally, the true capability of Kalina as an anti-satellite weapon is unclear. We know Russia developed the weapon in 2011. And now the development is underway, it's feasible that Russia may use it in the future. Russia's continuing space missions have remained under wraps. 1. Stealth bomber. A US Air Force stealth bomber was spotted on Google Earth flying over a farm in Missouri, thrilling internet fans. A Google Earth image showed the $2 billion aircraft above a rural field, possibly that of a Missouri farmer, west of Kansas City, Missouri. It was also not far from Whiteman Air Force Base, which is around 20 miles south of the Google Earth sighting, and where the US Air Force's stealth bombers are located. The US Air Force has been flying the B-2 stealth bomber, which has a wingspan of 172 feet since 1993, with the first aircraft being named Spirit of Missouri. There's something spooky in the air, one local stated. If you ever have an opportunity to see one at an air show, it's almost quiet as it loops overhead. In addition, I've heard that there's a demanding and pricey post-flight check. Thanks for watching. What's the craziest thing you've seen on Google Earth? Let us know in the comments below and don't forget to subscribe. See you next time. Bye.